Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurul Septiani. On this occasion, I will present the subject matter for the half of this semester. Okay, we start it. First material is pre-writing. Pre-writing consists of 4 steps. First is defining the context area. Context area is the area or range of topics that will be written based on prior knowledge. It is impossible for a writer to choose an area that he is not aware of. Deciding what context to write about is an important step in starting the academic writing process. In this study, the writing context area is English teaching learning. If this context is raised as the topic of writing, the scope will be too broad. So, the context area should be more specific but not narrow. Second step is finding and reviewing articles. Scientific articles are writings that contain scientific studies by following the standard of formal writing and scientific writing rules. How to review? Step 1 is read and understand the article carefully and repeatedly. Second is list the important points according to their own understanding. Third, analyze of strength and weakness in terms of content, method, and the language used. Fourth, every written analysis must be accompanied by arguments or reasons using appropriate theories. The last is writing recommendation. The third step is drafting. Drafting is the second step of the process of academic writing. This learning requires students to write a statement and make an initial framework of writing. Through this initial draft, students can develop their ideas into writing. The purpose of this drafting lesson is to help students create a writing framework in order to produce structured academic writing. And the last step is paraphrase. Paraphrasing means formulating someone else's ideas in your own words. To paraphrase a source, you have to rewrite a passage without changing the meaning of the original text. Paraphrasing is an alternative to quoting, where you copy someone's exact word and put them in quotation marks. In academic writing, it is usually better to paraphrase instead of quoting because it shows that you have understood the sources and makes your work more original. The next material is background of the problem. The background of the problem is the initial part of an academic or scientific course. The background is a compilation of adequate information based on the analysis of the problem or the arguments proposed. The steps and methods required to arrive at the design and implementation of the result achieved and the feasible solution. It is different from the introduction. The introduction contains only initial information about the research question or thesis topic. It is simple and an overview of the research question or thesis topic. But the background to the problem goes deeper and explains why the topic is important to study. Thus, on the background of the problem, information about the context of the entire article is written. This may include relevant and important studies. And how to make a good background? To make a good background has a step. First, formulate a statement thesis. First is formulate a statement thesis. Many problems are still very unclear, so it is necessary to strengthen the writer's thinking. Previous preliminary research is helpful for asking a research question or a thesis statement that will eventually lead to more relevant and specific writing. Second is develop and write down a research question or thesis statement. Third is complete the research using the question and thesis statement as a writing guide. Fourth, when writing the background to the problem, make relevant section. And the last is identification of further research that needs to be done in the conclusion section.
Chapter 1 Introduction. The background of the problem. According to the researcher's experience when she was studying English, speaking is the most difficult part for the student. Many of them are still incapable to use English orally. Many students always feel insecure and afraid of making mistakes when speaking English. This fear and discomfort can be caused by improper strategy used by the teacher. In fact, many teachers use inappropriate method of teaching speaking skills. They use teaching strategies that make students feel insecure, stressed out, and afraid of making mistakes. Identification of the problem is, in order to speak English well, students must feel comfortable and confident in practicing their English. By feeling comfortable and confident, students will not be afraid to make mistakes when speaking English. So the researchers are very interested in choosing the community language learning method. With this strategy, it is expected the students' interest in obtaining new views and the emergence of personal awareness can stimulate increasing speaking skills. The next is formulation of the problem. Based on the background of the problem stated before, the formulation of the problem proposed is as follows. Is there any differences of student speaking skill who taught with community language learning strategy and without community language learning strategy at SMP Negeri 1 Mandau? And the hypothesis of the research is basically a temporary answer to the formulation of the research problem. From the description before, the following hypothesis can be formulated. There is a significant effect of community language learning strategy to student speaking skill at SMP Negeri 1 Mandau. And purpose of the research. The aim of the research are to find out the effect of community language learning to student speaking skill at SMP Negeri 1 Mandau. And then the significance of the problem is the result of this research hopefully can be used as the solution of the speaking problem. Hopefully it can be used to improve and develop the English learning and teaching, especially in using community language learning in improve the student's speaking skill. And the last is definition of key term. One is speaking skill. According to Hornby, speaking is come from the word speak, means that talk or say the words. It means that speaking is one important skill in learning English because speaking uses to communicate with others. And the last is community language learning. Community language learning, or CLL, is a language teaching approach in which students work together to develop what aspect of a language they would like to learn. Chapter 2. Review of related literature. First is a review of related theories. One is speaking skill. The definition of speaking skill, according to Juhan 2012, speaking is a process of building and sharing meaning by the use of verbal and nonverbal signal. In many different contexts, its purpose is to communicate either transactionally or interactionally to send a message. Thus, it can be inferred that speaking is an ability used by a person as a tool to express, share, and communicate one's ideas, opinion, desires, or feeling to another depending on the context, the participants, the experience, the environment, and the purpose. The next is teaching speaking. In teaching speaking, the teachers must help students in learning process. She or he must be able to choose an appropriate speaking comprehension because they need an opportunity to practice. They should have solution how to get the students' activity to practice on the topic, the material. Therefore, teaching speaking is giving instruction to students to express their ideas informing to others. And then, basic types of speaking. According to Brown, 2004, there are 5 basic types of speech. First is imitative, second is intensive, third is responsive, fourth is interactive, and the last is extensive. Okay, the next material is community language learning. First is concept of community language learning. Community language learning, or CLL, is language teaching approach in which students work together to develop what aspect of a language they would like to learn. It is based on the counseling approach, in which the teacher acts as the counselor and paraphraser, while the learner is seen as a client and collaborator. The second is procedure of teaching community language learning. According to Larson and Freeman, 1986 recommended the procedure of teaching community language learning method as follows. First is tape recording student conversation. Second is transcription. Third is reflection on experience. Fourth, reflective listening. 5 is self-correction. And the last is small group task. And the last is CLL have advantage and disadvantage. First is advantage of community language learning. 1. The counselor allows the learners to determine type of conversation and to analyze the language inductively. 2. The student counter nature of the method can provide extrinsic motivation. 3 is cooperate student with the other student in learning a foreign language. 4 is increase student self-confidence in learning target language. And the last is the counselor allows the learner to determine the type of conversation. Disadvantage of community language learning. The counselor teacher can become too non-directive. Students often need direct. Next, it takes a lot of time. And the last is translation is an interactive and difficult task. The success of their method relies largely on the translation expertise of the counselor. The next material is a review of related findings. I have 3 three sources related to my research. First is Nur Kumalasari and Gismulatif 2002. The research title is The Use of Community Language Learning Method to Improve Speaking Ability to the Second Year Student of SMP Muhammadiyah 2 Pekanbaru. They says that it was true that there was improvement of speaking ability of the second year student of SMP Muhammadiyah 2 Pekanbaru. Therefore, the researcher concluded that the use of community language learning could improve the speaking ability of the second year student of SMP Muhammadiyah 2 Pekanbaru since the KKM score was achieved by the student. The second is Halimah and Friends 2019. The research title is Boosting Student Speaking Ability Through Community Language Learning. The researcher carried out post interviews with the student about the implementation of the CLL method at the end of the third cycle. According to the answer from the interviews, it was found that the condition of the student after implementing of the CLL method were better than before in terms of confidence, participation, enthusiasm, fluence, and understanding the content of EFL speech. The last is Puspitasari 2011. The research title is The Effectiveness of Using Community Language Learning or CLL to Improve Student Mastery of Speaking Skill for Transactional Conversation. The researcher found that the student ability improved. It could be seen from the table in the post-test result where the student score increased and the mean of the post-test was 71.5. Student mean score improved until 4.84 after given some materials. This method was used to improve the student's ability in speaking skill because the method gave a comfort atmosphere in doing speaking. The last part is conceptual framework. From this slide, we can see the conceptual framework. From this chart, it can be concluded that using community language learning strategy is expected to improve speaking skill. Okay, that's all enough from my chapter 1 and chapter 2 presentation. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.